The rain didn't fall that night. It attacked. It slammed against rooftops. It clawed at windows. It swallowed the streets whole. Thunder cracked across the sky, loud enough to make the ground tremble. And right in the middle of it, she was still outside, running. "Mommy, I'm scared." The small voice trembled behind her, barely audible under the storm. She tightened her grip instantly. "I've got you. I've got you." Her voice was soft, but rushed, strained. Her jacket was soaked through. Her shoes splashed through rising water, each step heavier than the last. But she didn't slow down, because stopping wasn't an option. Not tonight. Lightning tore across the sky, and for a split second, the entire street lit up. Empty, cold, abandoned, except for her, and the little girl clinging to her back, arms wrapped tightly around her shoulders, face buried into her neck. "Almost home," she whispered. But even she didn't believe it. The wind pushed harder. The rain came faster, and the street ahead blurred into nothing. Then, she saw it. A shape, barely visible through the storm. At first, she thought it was just debris. A fallen sign. A pile of trash. Something the storm had dragged into the road. She kept moving. Faster now. Head down. Eyes forward. Don't stop. Don't look. Don't risk it. But then, lightning struck again. And this time, the shape moved. She froze. Just for a second. Her heart skipped. No, not tonight. She turned her head away, forcing herself forward. "Keep going," she muttered under her breath. But something inside her wouldn't let her. Another step, then another, and then a sound. Low, weak, almost swallowed by the storm. A groan. She stopped completely. The rain kept pounding. The thunder kept roaring. But in that moment, everything else went silent. She turned, slowly, carefully, and looked back. There, on the side of the road, half covered in rain and mud, was a man, lying still, his clothes soaked, his body barely moving. Blood. Her breath caught. "Mommy," the little girl whispered. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Her mind was already racing. What if it's dangerous? What if it's a trap? What if I can't help him? Another flash of lightning. His face came into view. Pale, unconscious, broken, and alone. The storm roared louder, like it was warning her. Walk away. Keep going. Protect your child. That's what she should do. That's what any sane person would do. She turned again, took one step forward, then another, but her chest tightened. Her pace slowed, and then she stopped, completely. Her eyes closed for a brief second. A breath, a decision. When she turned back this time, there was no hesitation left. She rushed toward him, dropping to her knees in the rain. "Hey, can you hear me?" No response. She reached out, shaking him gently. "Stay with me, please." Nothing. Just the storm. Just the sound of rain hitting skin and pavement. She looked down at him, really looked this time. Something about him didn't fit. Even through the dirt, even through the blood, there was something different. But she didn't have time to think. Not now. Not here. Not in this storm. She glanced back at the empty road. No cars. No help. No one coming. Which meant it was up to her. Her grip tightened. Her jaw clenched. Okay. She adjusted the child on her back, shifted her weight, and tried to lift him. He was heavier than she expected. Her arms shook instantly. But she didn't stop, because leaving him here wasn't an option anymore. Not after she saw him. Not after she heard that sound. Not after she chose to turn back. The rain poured harder. The storm raged louder. But step by step, she pulled him up and into her world, not knowing who he was, not knowing what he carried with him, not knowing that this one decision would change everything. She had no idea. Stopping that night would change her life forever. By the time Olivia dragged him through the door, her arms were shaking so badly she thought she might collapse. The storm stayed outside, but its weight followed her in. Her small apartment was dim. One flickering light, a cracked window patched with tape, the faint hum of an overworked refrigerator struggling to stay alive. It wasn't much, but it was all she had. "Mommy, who is that?" the little girl whispered. Olivia swallowed hard. Someone who needs help. That was enough for her daughter. It always was. Carefully, Olivia lowered the man onto the old couch. The cushion sank under his weight. Water pooled beneath him, dripping onto the worn floor. She didn't hesitate, didn't think. She moved fast. Towels, a blanket, a bowl of water. Her hands worked on instinct, peeling away his soaked jacket, revealing bruises, cuts, and blood that made her chest tighten. "Stay with me. Please stay with me," she murmured, more to herself than to him. No response, just shallow breathing. That was something. Behind her, small footsteps padded closer. "Is he sleeping?" Olivia glanced back, forcing a soft smile. "Yeah, something like that." Her daughter nodded seriously, accepting it without question. Children didn't need all the answers. Sometimes they just needed reassurance. Olivia turned back, dipping a cloth into water, gently cleaning the blood from his face. The dirt washed away slowly, revealing sharper features beneath the mess. He didn't look like he belonged out there. Not in the cold, not in the rain, not on the ground like he had nothing. But Olivia pushed the thought aside. It didn't matter who he was. What mattered was keeping him alive. Minutes turned into an hour. The storm faded into distant thunder. And exhaustion finally began to settle into her bones. She sat back, breathing heavily, staring at the man lying on her couch. James Dean. She didn't know his name yet. Didn't know anything about him. Only that he was here, and that she had chosen not to walk away. A small tug on her sleeve pulled her back. "Mommy, I'm hungry." Of course she was. Olivia closed her eyes for a brief second, then stood up. "Okay, let's see what we have." She walked to the kitchen, opening the fridge slowly. Inside, almost nothing. A half carton of milk, 2 eggs, a few slices of bread that were already going stale. That was it. Her jaw tightened. She had been saving that, stretching it, making it last, because payday was still 3 days away. And she already knew there wasn't enough coming in. Not this week. Not any week. Behind her, her daughter waited patiently, small hands clasped together. Trusting. Always trusting. Olivia forced a smile. "How about eggs and toast?" A bright nod. "My favorite." Of course it was, because it was all they ever had. Olivia turned to the stove, lighting the weak flame. The pan heated slowly, like everything else in this apartment. She cracked the eggs carefully, making sure not to waste a single drop. Every little bit mattered. Every small piece counted. As the food cooked, her eyes drifted back to the couch, to the man she had brought inside. Another mouth to feed. Another problem she couldn't afford. Another weight on shoulders that were already breaking. And yet, she didn't regret it. Not even for a second. She plated the food, cutting it into smaller portions, making it look like more than it was. Her daughter smiled anyway. She always did. They ate quietly, the sound of forks against plates filling the room. Olivia didn't take a full bite. Just small ones. Enough to pretend. Enough to make it seem like she wasn't giving most of it away. Because that's what she did. That's what she had always done. Give. Even when she had nothing left. After dinner, she tucked her daughter into bed, brushing soft strands of hair away from her face. "Mommy." "Yeah." "Is he staying?" Olivia hesitated. Just for a moment. "I don't know yet." A pause. Then a quiet answer. "He looks sad." Olivia's chest tightened. "Yeah, he does." She turned off the light and stepped back into the living room. The man was still there. Still breathing. Still a stranger. But no longer alone. Olivia sank into a chair, her body finally giving in to exhaustion. Her eyes lingered on him. On everything this meant. On everything this could become. Bills. Rent. Food. She was already barely surviving. Already one step away from losing everything. And now, she had made a choice that could push her over the edge. Her fingers tightened in her lap. Her breath slow. Heavy. Uncertain. Because deep down, she already knew the truth. Helping him might cost her everything. Morning came quietly. No thunder. No chaos. Just a thin line of sunlight pushing through the cracked window. Olivia was already awake. She hadn't really slept. Every sound during the night had pulled her eyes open. Every shift from the couch made her sit up. Every breath he took, she listened, making sure it didn't stop. Now she stood near the kitchen, watching him. The stranger. Still on her couch. Still alive. Barely. A soft cough broke the silence. Her head snapped up. He moved. Just slightly. But enough. Olivia stepped closer, heart picking up pace. Hey, can you hear me? His eyes didn't open, but his brow tightened. Another sign. She leaned in. Come on, stay with me. A pause. Then, a breath. Deeper this time. His fingers twitched. And slowly, his eyes opened. For a second, they didn't focus. They moved, searching, adjusting. Then they landed on her. Sharp. Alert. Too alert. Olivia froze. There was something in that look. Not confusion. Not weakness. Awareness. Like he had been here before. Like he knew exactly what to do next. He tried to sit up. Failed. A sharp breath escaped him as pain shot through his body. Easy, Olivia said quickly, placing a hand on his shoulder. You're hurt. He looked at her hand, then back at her face, studying, calculating, before finally speaking. Where am I? His voice was rough, low, controlled. You're safe, Olivia answered. My apartment. I found you last night in the storm. A pause. His eyes shifted around the room, taking everything in. The cracked walls, the small space, the worn furniture. Nothing escaped him. Why, he asked. Olivia frowned. Why what? Why bring me here? The question caught her off guard. Because you needed help. Silence. He stared at her for a long moment, as if that answer didn't make sense, as if he was searching for something else. People don't usually do that, he said. Olivia shrugged slightly. Maybe they should. Another pause. Then he looked away. His jaw tightened, like he didn't believe her. Or maybe, like he wasn't used to it. Olivia crossed her arms lightly. Do you have a name? A beat. Too long. James. He hesitated. Just slightly. But she noticed. James what? Dean. Again. A pause before answering. Small. But there. Olivia didn't push. Not yet. All right, James, she said calmly. You were pretty bad last night. You lost a lot of blood. You should rest. He nodded slowly, but his eyes didn't relax. They kept moving, watching, listening, like he was waiting for something. Or someone. A small voice interrupted. Mommy. Both of them turned. Her daughter stood at the doorway, rubbing her eyes, still half asleep. Then she saw him, and instantly lit up. He's awake. Olivia smiled softly. Yeah, he is. The little girl walked closer, curious and fearless. James watched her carefully. Not with discomfort, but with something else. Something softer. You okay? She asked him. Olivia almost laughed. Straight to the point. James blinked once, then nodded. I think so. Good, she said satisfied. Mommy makes good food. Olivia shook her head. Ignore her. But James didn't. A faint smile touched his face. Quick. Gone just as fast. Olivia noticed that too. Everything about him felt controlled. Measured. Even injured. Even weak. Nothing about him was careless. Do you remember what happened? She asked. His expression shifted. Just slightly. Then, I was attacked. Simple. Direct. Too simple. By who? I don't know. Another quick answer. Too quick. Olivia studied him now. Really studied him. His posture. His tone. His eyes. There were gaps. Missing pieces. Things he wasn't saying. And he knew it. He could feel her noticing. I don't remember much, he added. But this time, it sounded rehearsed. Like a line he had already prepared. Olivia nodded slowly. Okay. But her mind didn't settle. Because something didn't add up. Not the way he spoke. Not the way he watched everything. Not the way he chose his words carefully. Like every sentence mattered. Like every mistake could cost him. This wasn't just some random man caught in a storm. There was more. A lot more. And he wasn't ready to say it. Not yet. Across the room, her daughter climbed onto the couch beside him without hesitation. Too close. Too trusting. Olivia moved instantly. Hey, be careful. It's okay, James said quietly. He didn't move away. Didn't pull back. Just sat there. Still. Letting her stay. And, for a moment, he looked different. Less guarded. Less distant. Almost human again. But didn't last. Because a second later, his eyes flicked toward the window. Sharp. Focused. Like he heard something she didn't. Like danger wasn't far. Like whatever he was running from was still out there. And getting closer. Olivia felt it. That shift. That tension. That unspoken warning. Her grip tightened slightly. Because now she knew this wasn't just about helping someone. This was something else. something bigger, something dangerous. And as she stood there, watching the man she had brought into her home, a quiet thought settled deep in her chest. Heavy, unshakable, because what she didn't know was who she had just let into her home. James Dean wasn't just a stranger. He wasn't just a man pulled from a storm. And he definitely wasn't who he claimed to be. Because the truth was something Olivia couldn't even imagine. Just 3 days ago, James Dean had been sitting at the top floor of a glass tower, overlooking an entire city that moved at his command. Boardrooms, private jets, security teams that never let him out of sight. His real name wasn't James Dean. It was something far more powerful, far more dangerous. He was one of the wealthiest men in the country. A billionaire. The kind of man who didn't walk into rooms. He owned them. Every decision he made moved millions. Every word he spoke carried weight. And every person around him knew exactly who he was. Or at least, they thought they did. Because behind the money, behind the control, there was something else. Something he had started to notice. People didn't see him. They saw what he had. They smiled when he entered. Agreed when he spoke. Laughed when he wasn't funny. Not because they wanted to, but because they needed something from him. Deals. Opportunities. Money. Everything was transactional. Everything had a price. And slowly, it started to suffocate him. He couldn't trust anyone. Not his partners. Not his employees. Not even the people who called themselves his friends. Because the moment the money disappeared, so did they. And then, something happened. A deal. A big one. Bigger than anything he had handled before. But it went wrong. Very wrong. Not by accident. By design. Someone inside his circle had set him up. Fed him false numbers. Pushed him toward a decision that could have destroyed everything. And when he started asking questions, people got nervous. Quiet. Defensive. That's when he realized. This wasn't just business. It was betrayal. And worse. It was dangerous. Because the kind of people involved in deals like that didn't like loose ends. So he made a decision. A risky one. He disappeared. Not publicly. Not officially. To the world, he was still out there. Still working. Still untouchable. But behind the scenes, he vanished. No security. No assistance. No luxury. Just him. Alone. He changed his name. Changed his appearance. Left everything behind. Not because he wanted to, because he had to. He needed to know who he could trust. He needed to see the world without the power, without the money, without the mask. And more importantly, he needed to find out who was behind it all. So he stepped into a life he had never known. Cold nights, empty streets, no recognition, no protection. For the first time in years, he was invisible. And that's when everything changed. Because people treated him differently. Not with respect, not with admiration, but with indifference. Sometimes worse. He saw things he had never seen before. Struggle, hunger, pain. The kind that didn't show up in reports or numbers. The kind that didn't care about wealth. And then, the storm came. He wasn't supposed to be there that night. Wasn't supposed to get caught in it. But something went wrong. Someone found him. Or at least, someone got too close. He didn't remember everything. Just flashes. Voices. Hands. A blow. Darkness. And then, rain. Cold. Pain. And a fading awareness that this time, he might not make it out. Until she appeared. Olivia. Out of nowhere. Out of logic. Out of every reasonable decision. She stopped. She helped. She chose him. Not knowing who he was. Not knowing what he carried. Not knowing the danger that followed him. And now, he was inside her home. Inside her life. Closer than anyone had been since he disappeared. Watching her. Learning her. Testing something he hadn't felt in a long time. Genuine kindness. No expectations. No hidden agenda. Just human. But the truth remained. Heavy. Unspoken. Dangerous. Because somewhere out there, the people who want him gone were still looking. Still watching. Still waiting. And they would never think to search here. In a small, broken apartment. In a life of a struggling single mother. Because to them, this place didn't matter. This life didn't matter. Which made it perfect. Because now, he was hiding in the last place anyone would think to look. The night slowly softened. The storm that had raged so violently before now faded into a distant whisper, leaving behind a quiet that felt almost fragile. Inside the small house, the air was warm, but heavy with uncertainty. Olivia moved carefully. Every step she took was deliberate, almost cautious, as if she was afraid that one wrong movement might shatter whatever fragile peace had settled between them. James sat on the edge of the worn couch, his posture tense despite the exhaustion written all over his face. He wasn't used to this. Not the silence, not the stillness, and definitely not kindness without expectation. Olivia returned from the kitchen with a small bowl and a clean cloth. Simple things, but in that moment, they felt like something more. She knelt slightly in front of him, her expression calm, focused. "Let me see," she said softly. James hesitated, not because of the pain, but because of her. The way she looked at him, not with suspicion, not with fear, but with quiet concern. Slowly, he allowed her. She gently unwrapped the makeshift bandage she had tied earlier. Her fingers were careful, precise, yet tender. When she noticed the dried blood, her brows tightened slightly. "That's going to need cleaning," she murmured. No judgment, no questions, just care. James watched her as she worked. Watched the way she dipped the cloth into warm water. Watched the way she squeezed it gently before pressing it against his wound. It stung, but he didn't flinch, because somehow the pain felt distant compared to the unfamiliar warmth spreading through him. "You should rest after this," Olivia added quietly. "You've lost a lot of strength." James let out a faint breath. "I've had worse," he replied. It was automatic, a habit. But Olivia didn't respond to that. She simply continued, focused on helping him, as if his past didn't matter, as if who he was didn't matter. And that unsettled him more than anything. From the corner of the room, a small voice broke the silence. "Is he going to be okay?" Both of them turned. A young child stood there, clutching the edge of the doorway, eyes wide with curiosity and a hint of worry. Olivia's expression softened instantly. "It's okay, sweetheart," she said gently. "He just needs a little time." The child stepped closer, hesitant at first, then braver with each step. James watched carefully. Children, in his world, were distant, protected, kept behind layers of control and security. But this child, there was no fear, only curiosity. "Does it hurt?" the child asked, tilting their head slightly. James blinked, caught off guard. "A little," he admitted. The child frowned, thinking deeply, then nodded. "My mom says it helps if you don't think about it too much." Olivia smiled faintly, shaking her head. "I say a lot of things. But they work," the child insisted. That made something shift. A small, almost invisible crack in the walls James had built around himself. He found himself giving a slight nod. "I'll try that." The child smiled, satisfied, then moved closer to Olivia, resting comfortably beside her as she finished wrapping the bandage. The room felt different now. Lighter, warmer, alive in a way James hadn't felt in a long time. Olivia stood, wiping her hands gently. "I'll get you something to eat," she said. "It's not much, but it will help." She didn't wait for an answer. She simply walked back toward the kitchen, her movements quiet, natural, practiced. James leaned back slightly, his gaze following her. He noticed everything now. The worn furniture, the small cracks on the wall, the way the house held signs of struggle, but also care. Nothing was perfect, but everything was real. The child climbed onto the couch beside him without hesitation. "Are you staying here?" they asked. James paused. The question was simple, but the answer, "I don't know," he said honestly. The child nodded slowly, as if that made perfect sense. "You can stay," they said after a moment. "Mom helps people." James looked at the child, then toward the kitchen, where Olivia moved quietly, preparing food with what little she had. Helping people, as if it was that simple, as if it didn't cost anything. But he could see it now. Every action she took cost her something. Time, energy, resources she barely had. And yet, she gave anyway, without hesitation, without expectation, without knowing who he really was. Olivia returned with a small plate, setting it carefully in front of him. "It's all I can make quickly," she said. James glanced at it. Simple food, nothing extravagant. But for some reason, it felt like more than anything he had ever been given. "Thank you," he said quietly. Olivia gave a small nod, brushing it off as nothing. But it wasn't nothing. And as James sat there, surrounded by a warmth he didn't understand, watching a woman who gave without asking, a child who trusted without fear, he felt something unfamiliar begin to grow inside him. Something dangerous. Something real. Because the more he watched her, the more he saw her strength, her kindness, her quiet resilience. The harder it became to keep his secret. The morning came slowly, not with peace, but with weight. A quiet kind of pressure that settled into the walls of the small house. James was already awake. He hadn't slept much, not because of pain, but because of thoughts he couldn't silence. He sat still, eyes open, staring at the ceiling as faint light slipped through the thin curtains. This wasn't his world. Nothing about this place made sense to him. The worn couch, the chipped walls, the silence that carried more truth than any boardroom he had ever walked into. And yet, he was still here. He exhaled slowly. He knew what he should do. Leave. Disappear. Go back to the life that was waiting for him. The life built on control, power, and precision. But something held him back. Something he couldn't explain. Or maybe something he didn't want to explain. He turned his head slightly. From where he sat, he could see into the small kitchen. Olivia was there, moving quietly, preparing something simple. Again, as if giving was part of her nature. As if she didn't know how to do anything else. James's jaw tightened slightly. She had no idea who he was. No idea what kind of world he came from. And that was exactly why he couldn't tell her. Not yet. Because the moment he did, everything would change. The way she looked at him, the way she spoke to him, the way she treated him. It would all shift. From kindness to caution. From warmth to distance. He had seen it too many times before. People didn't see him. They saw his name, his power, his wealth. And suddenly, everything became calculated, measured, false. But here, in this small, fragile space, there was none of that. Only honesty, only reality, only her. James ran a hand over his face, exhaling again. There was also the danger. The reason he had ended up here in the first place. The reason he had disappeared. They were still out there, looking, waiting. And if anyone found him here, it wouldn't just be his problem. It would become hers, and her child's. That thought alone was enough to make his chest tighten. So no, he couldn't tell her. Not yet. Not until he understood what was happening. Not until he could control again. But leaving, that was no longer as simple as it should have been. Because now, there was something here he hadn't expected. Something he hadn't planned for. Something that made walking away harder than it should be. Olivia turned slightly, noticing him watching. "You're awake," she said softly. James straightened just a little. "Yeah." She nodded, placing a small cup on the table. "You should eat something again. It will help you recover faster." There was again that same quiet care. No questions. No pressure. Just presence. James hesitated for a brief moment, then nodded. "I'll stay a little longer," he said. The words came out before he could stop them. Olivia didn't react the way he expected. No surprise. No curiosity, just a simple nod. Okay. As if it wasn't unusual. As if it didn't matter. As if he was just someone who needed time. And that was enough. But to James, it wasn't simple. Because staying meant risk. Staying meant getting closer. Staying meant delaying the truth. And deep down, he knew exactly what that meant. Because what started as hiding was becoming something else. The days didn't get easier. They got heavier. Olivia felt it in everything, in every step, in every breath, in every quiet moment when she allowed herself to think. The bills were piling up, more than she could handle, more than she could ignore. She sat at the small table, papers spread out in front of her, her fingers pressing lightly against her forehead. Numbers didn't lie, and right now, they were unforgiving. Late payments, final notices, warnings that didn't leave room for hope. She closed her eyes for a brief second. Just 1 second. But even that felt like too much. From the other side of the room, her child's soft voice broke through. "Mom!" Olivia opened her eyes instantly. "Yes, sweetheart. Are we okay? The question was simple, but it carried everything. Fear, uncertainty, trust. Olivia forced a small smile. Of course we are. The answer came quickly. Too quickly. But had to, because she couldn't let that fear reach her child. Not yet. Not ever. We just have a few things to sort out, she added gently. Her child nodded, accepting it. Because children believe, even when reality says otherwise. But Olivia knew the truth. She was running out of time. The landlord had already warned her. Twice. And the last conversation hadn't been kind. Next time I come here, I expect payment. The words echoed in her mind. Cold. Final. Unforgiving. And now, that time was close. Too close. James watched all of this quietly. From a distance. He didn't ask. Didn't interrupt. But he saw everything. The way Olivia's shoulders carried weight she didn't show. The way she stretched every small resource just a little further. The way she hid the truth just enough to protect her child. It didn't go unnoticed. Nothing about her struggle was invisible. And for the first time in his life, James felt something he wasn't used to feeling. Helpless. Because solving problems was what he did. It was who he was. But here, he couldn't step in. Not without revealing everything. Not without breaking the fragile reality she was holding on to. And so he stayed silent. Watching. Learning. Feeling the pressure build in a way he had never experienced before. Olivia gathered the papers quickly, stacking them together as if hiding them could somehow delay the outcome. But deep down, she knew she was standing at the edge, and one more push would send everything falling apart. She was about to lose everything, and she didn't even know it. The knock came without warning. Sharp, loud, unforgiving. It cut through the house like a blade. Olivia froze. Her hands tightened slightly as her eyes moved toward the door. She already knew. Before opening it, she already knew. James stood slowly, his body instinctively alert. The energy in the room had changed. Shifted from quiet tension to something heavier. Something dangerous. The knock came again. More forceful this time. Olivia took a breath. Then another. And finally she moved. Each step toward the door felt heavier than the last, until she reached it and opened it. Standing there was a woman whose presence alone carried authority. Cold, sharp, unyielding. Her stepmother, dressed in neat, expensive clothing that stood in harsh contrast to everything inside the house. Her eyes moved quickly, scanning, judging, calculating. Well, she said, her tone edged with disapproval. I see nothing has changed. Olivia straightened slightly. What are you doing here? Her stepmother stepped inside, without waiting for permission. I came to check on something that clearly hasn't been handled. Her gaze shifted, and landed on James. Instantly, everything about her expression changed. Suspicion, disgust, judgment. And who is this? She asked sharply. Olivia hesitated for only a moment. He's someone who needed help. That answer didn't sit well. Not at all. Her stepmother let out a short, cold laugh. Of course he is. She stepped closer, circling slightly, as if examining him. James didn't move, didn't react, but his eyes stayed locked on her. Calm, controlled, observing. This is exactly why you're in this situation, the stepmother continued. You bring strangers into your home while you can't even pay your own bills. Olivia's jaw tightened. That's not your concern. Oh, but it is, the stepmother snapped. Because when you fail, it reflects on all of us. Her voice rose slightly, sharp enough to cut. You've always been like this. Weak, emotional, making decisions based on pity instead of sense. The words landed hard, but Olivia didn't respond immediately, because reacting would only make it worse. And she knew that, but the tension was building. Fast, uncontrolled. Her stepmother turned back to James. You, she said coldly. How long do you plan on staying here? Living off someone who has nothing to give. Silence. Heavy. Thick. James slowly stood. Not aggressively. Not defensively. Just deliberately. I'm not here to cause problems, he said calmly. But his voice carried something else. Something steady. Something unshaken. That alone seemed to irritate her more. Oh, you already are, she replied. People like you always are. Olivia stepped forward. That's enough. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was firm, and that was new. Her stepmother paused, clearly not expecting resistance. For a brief second, the room shifted. Then her expression hardened. Fine, she said coldly. Let's stop pretending. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded document, then placed it firmly on the table. You have until the end of the week. Olivia's breath caught. If you don't pay what you owe, you're out. The words echoed, louder than anything else. Final. Unavoidable. Her stepmother turned toward the door, then stopped, just long enough to deliver one last blow. And next time I come here, I don't want to see strangers living under a roof you can't afford. The door shut behind her. Hard. The silence that followed was heavier than before. Much heavier. Olivia stood still, not moving, not speaking, as the weight of everything pressed down at once. James looked at her, really looked at her, and in that moment, the situation became clear in a way it hadn't before. This wasn't just struggle. This was collapse. Slow, painful, unavoidable, and for the first time, he felt something shift inside him. Something sharper, something more dangerous. Because this was no longer just about hiding. It was no longer just about staying. Now, it was becoming something bigger. And this was only the beginning of their problems. The silence after the confrontation didn't fade. It settled. Heavy, uncomfortable, unavoidable. Olivia moved slowly around the house, as if pretending everything was normal could somehow make it true. But nothing was normal anymore. Not the way her hands trembled slightly when she picked things up. Not the way her eyes kept drifting toward the folded document on the table. Not the way the air itself felt tighter, harder to breathe. James noticed all of it. Every detail. Every crack in the calm she was trying to hold together. But he didn't say anything. Not yet. Because something didn't sit right. Something about the way her stepmother had spoken. The confidence. The control. It wasn't just concern. It was ownership. And that didn't make sense. Olivia stepped out briefly, calling back softly, I need to grab a few things. I'll be back soon. The door closed behind her. And just like that, the house fell into a deeper silence. James stood still for a moment, thinking, replaying every word from earlier. Every look, every tone. Then his eyes shifted back to the table, to the document. He hesitated, just for a second, because he knew crossing that line meant stepping into something he couldn't ignore. But something inside him pushed forward. Slowly, he reached for it, unfolded it, and began to read. At first, it looked like exactly what Olivia believed it was. A notice, a demand, a final warning. But then, his eyes narrowed. There was more, hidden between the lines, buried beneath the language. Details most people would overlook. But James wasn't most people. His entire life had been built on reading what others missed. And right now, he was seeing something very wrong. The numbers didn't match. The amount listed was higher than it should have been. Significantly higher. Fees stacked on fees. Charges that had no clear explanation. Terms written in a way that twisted responsibility. And then, he saw it. A clause. Small. Easy to ignore. But devastating. If unpaid. Full control of the property would transfer. Not to a bank. Not to a neutral party, but directly to her stepmother. James went still, completely still, as the realization hit. This wasn't pressure. This wasn't help. This was a setup, carefully planned, carefully executed. Olivia wasn't just struggling. She was being pushed, cornered, manipulated into losing everything. And she didn't even see it, because she trusted the system around her, because she believed this was just bad luck. James's jaw tightened. His grip on the paper hardened slightly. Anger rose quickly. Sharp, controlled, but powerful. This wasn't business. This wasn't negotiation. This was exploitation. Cold, deliberate, and personal. His mind moved fast now, connecting everything. The urgency, the sudden deadline, the presence of the stepmother, the confidence in her voice. It all made sense. She wasn't waiting for Olivia to fail. She was ensuring it. James exhaled slowly, forcing himself to stay calm. But inside, something had already shifted. Because this wasn't just about him anymore. This wasn't just about hiding. This was about injustice. And for someone like him, that wasn't something he ignored. From the hallway, a small voice broke through his thoughts. Is something wrong? James turned. Olivia's child stood there, watching him closely. Innocent, unaware, trusting. James looked at the child, then back at the document in his hand. And for a brief moment, he saw the future. What would happen if nothing changed? What would be taken? What would be lost? Not just a house, not just stability, but safety, trust, home. He folded the paper carefully, placed it back exactly where it had been. But his mind didn't leave it. Not for a second. Because now he knew. Olivia wasn't just in danger of losing everything. She was being led there, step by step, by someone she should have been able to trust. James straightened slightly, his expression shifting into something colder. More focused, more precise. This was no longer a situation he could stand back and watch. Not anymore. Because what he found wasn't just unfair. It was calculated and dangerous. And as he stood there, the weight of that truth settling in fully, one thing became clear. What he found changed everything. The night felt heavier than usual. Not because of the storm, not because of the cold, but because of the silence between them. James Dean sat alone at the edge of the small living room, his hands clasped tightly together, unmoving, uncertain. For the first time, he didn't know what to do. Across the room, Olivia laughed softly with her child. A quiet, genuine sound. The kind that came from someone who had learned to find light, even in darkness. And somehow, that made everything worse. Because she trusted him. Without question. Without doubt. James looked up, watched her. The way she moved. The way she spoke. The way she gave. Even when she had nothing left to give. She had taken him in. Fed him. Protected him. Believed in him. And she didn't even know who he was. His jaw tightened. A flicker of guilt crossing his face. She deserves to know. The thought came quietly. But it didn't leave. He leaned back, exhaling slowly. Trying to push it away. Trying to justify the silence. Not yet. Not like this. If he told her now, everything would change. Her eyes would look at him differently. Her voice would shift. That natural warmth replaced with distance. Caution. Maybe even fear. And worse. She might think he had been lying to her all along. Which he had. James closed his eyes. The truth pressing harder now. He wasn't just hiding. He was deceiving her. Every moment he stayed. Every word he didn't say. Every time she looked at him with trust in her eyes. And still, he said nothing. Because leaving wasn't an option anymore. Not now. Not after everything. He glanced toward the table. At the worn-out bills stacked neatly beside Olivia's bag. Unpaid. Ignored. Waiting. His gaze darkened. He knew what those numbers meant. Knew the pressure closing in around her. Knew how close she was to losing everything. And just like that, the conflict inside him shifted. This wasn't just about his secret anymore. It was about her. If he revealed the truth now, he could help her instantly. Erase her struggles. Change her life in a single moment. But what cost? Would she accept it? Or would she push him away? Because to her, he wasn't a billionaire. He wasn't powerful. He wasn't untouchable. He was just James, the quiet stranger she chose to help. And maybe that was the only reason she let him stay. James swallowed hard, the weight of that realization settling deep. If he told her the truth, he might lose the only place where he wasn't seen as a title, a name, a fortune. He would lose this small, fragile, real connection. And for the first time in years, that scared him. More than exposure, more than the people looking for him, more than the consequences waiting outside that door. Because out there, he knew how to survive. But in here, he had something to lose. Olivia turned toward him suddenly. Their eyes met. She smiled. Soft, trusting, unaware. You okay? She asked gently. A simple question, but it hit harder than anything else. James forced a small nod. Yeah, I'm fine. But his voice wasn't convincing. Olivia studied him for a moment, as if she could sense something beneath the surface. Something unspoken. But she didn't push, didn't question, didn't doubt. She simply nodded and turned away. And somehow, that trust hurt more than suspicion ever could. James looked down again. His reflection faintly visible in the dark window beside him. A stranger, even to himself. How much longer could he keep this up? How many more moments like this? Before the truth forced its way out? Because it would, sooner or later. Secrets like his always did. And when it happened, there would be no going back. No explanations. No second chances. Just consequences. James exhaled slowly. The decision still just out of reach. Tell her the truth. Or protect the one thing that felt real. But deep down, he already knew. The longer he stayed, the bigger the lie became. Morning came quietly. No storm. No chaos. Just soft light slipping through the curtains. Olivia was already awake, moving gently around the small kitchen. Careful not to make noise. Careful not to wake him. But James Dean was already watching. From the hallway. Silent. Still. He studied her for a moment. The way she moved with purpose. The way she carried exhaustion without ever showing it. She looked tired. But she didn't stop. Morning, he said softly. Olivia turned. Surprised at first. Then she smiled. Warm. Natural. You're up early. James nodded slightly. I could say the same. She let out a quiet breath. Habit. That one word carried more than she explained. And he noticed. There was a pause. Not awkward. Just calm. Sit, she said gently. I made something small. He hesitated. Then stepped forward. The table was simple. Bread. Tea. Nothing more. But to him, it felt different. He sat across from her. And for a moment, neither of them spoke. Then her child ran in. Energy filling the room instantly. Laughter. Movement. Life. James watched closely. The way Olivia softened. The way her entire world seemed to shift. This was her reason. Her strength. And slowly, without realizing it, he became part of that moment. Later that day, he fixed the broken cabinet. Quietly. Carefully. Without being asked. Olivia noticed. Of course she did. You didn't have to do that, she said. James shrugged lightly. It was falling apart. She looked at it. Then back at him. Still, thank you. Her voice was softer now. More personal. And something in the air changed. Just slightly. But enough. Days began to pass. Not rushed. Not forced. Natural. He stayed longer. Helped more. Spoke a little more each time. And Olivia, she started asking questions. Small ones. Careful ones. Where are you from? James paused. Just for a second. Then answered vaguely. Not far. She didn't push. But she noticed. Still. She trusted him. That trust grew in silence. In shared glances. In quiet conversations late at night. One evening, the power went out. Darkness filled the room. Her child moved closer to her instantly. Afraid, Olivia lit a candle. Placed it between them. The small flame flickered, casting shadows across their faces. James sat across from her. Watching. Listening. Tell a story, the child whispered. Olivia smiled faintly. Then began. Her voice was soft, gentle, but strong. James didn't just hear the story. He felt it, because beneath every word was her life, her struggle, her hope. And without thinking, he spoke. I know one too. Olivia looked at him, curious. So he told one, not about wealth, not about power, but about loss, and finding something unexpected. And for the first time, he wasn't hiding completely. The room felt closer, warmer. Their eyes met again. Longer this time. Something unspoken passed between them. Not rushed. Not forced. Just there. Later that night, Olivia found an envelope near her bag. Inside, money. Not too much, but enough to ease something. Her brows furrowed. Confused. She looked around. James wasn't there. The next day, more things changed. Groceries appeared. Bills quietly reduced. Problems softened. But no explanation. Olivia started to notice the pattern. And slowly, questions returned. Not about who he said he was, but about who he might actually be. James saw it too. The shift. The awareness growing. And still, he said nothing. Because every moment like this pulled him deeper into something real. Something dangerous. Because this wasn't part of his plan anymore. This was something else. Something he didn't want to lose. And maybe that was the biggest risk of all. Olivia stood by the window that evening. Quiet. Thinking. James stepped beside her. Not too close. Not too far. Things feel different, she said softly. He didn't answer. Because they did. And they both knew it. But neither of them said why. Outside, the world moved on. Unaware. Unchanged. But inside, everything was shifting. And neither of them was ready for what came next. Because secrets like his don't stay hidden forever. It started quietly. Too quietly. Olivia noticed it first. The way the landlord looked at her. Different. Colder. He didn't greet her like before. Didn't even stop. Just passed by. As if he already knew something she didn't. A feeling settled in her chest. Uneasy. Unclear. Inside the house. Everything seemed normal. James Dean was fixing a loose hinge near the door. Focused. Calm. You okay? He asked without looking up. Olivia hesitated. Then nodded. Yeah, just tired. But it wasn't just that. Something was off. That evening, a knock hit the door. Sharp. Sudden. Olivia froze. James looked up. Their eyes met. Another knock. Louder this time. I'll get it, she said. She opened the door slowly. Two men stood outside. Dressed formally. Serious. Behind them. The landlord. Watching. Olivia? One of the men asked. Her throat tightened. Yes. We need to ask you a few questions. Her heart skipped. About what? The man glanced down at a file. Then back at her. A financial report connected to this address. Confusion hit instantly. What report? I don't. You've been receiving unexplained funds. Silence. Olivia blinked. What? The landlord stepped forward. Finally speaking. I warned you, he said coldly. I knew something wasn't right. Olivia turned to him. Stunned. That's not true. I didn't do anything. The men exchanged a look. Unmoved. We'll need you to come with us. Her breath caught. No. There has to be a mistake. Behind her, James stood still. Listening. Watching. Every word landed like a blow. Unexplained funds. His jaw tightened. This wasn't random. Someone had traced the money. Or worse. Set this up. Olivia stepped back, shaking her head. I didn't take anything. I don't even know what you're talking about. The landlord scoffed, then explained the sudden changes. Her eyes widened. The groceries. The bills. The money. Realization hit. Hard. Slowly. She turned. Toward James. Their eyes met. And in that moment, everything shifted. James, she whispered. His chest tightened. He could see it. The question forming. The doubt. You knew, she asked quietly. He didn't answer. That silence said everything. Her expression broke. You did this, her voice rose slightly. Without telling me, it's not what you think. Then what is it? She cut in. The men at the door watched. Waiting. James stepped forward. Careful. I was trying to help. Help? Her voice shook now. You lied. Every word hit harder than the last. I didn't lie. You hid everything. Silence filled the room. Heavy. Sharp. Her child stood behind her. Confused. Afraid. Olivia stepped back, putting distance between them. I trusted you, she said. Soft, but devastating. James felt it. Every word. I know, he said quietly, but it wasn't enough. The men stepped forward again. Ma'am, we don't have much time. Olivia didn't move. Didn't respond. Her eyes stayed locked on James. Who are you? She asked. The question hung in the air. James opened his mouth, then stopped, because the truth would change everything, and the lie had already destroyed enough. Before he could speak, the landlord stepped in. I think we all know the answer, he said. He turned to the officers. This man showed up out of nowhere. And suddenly she has money? It's obvious. Olivia shook her head. No, that's not. But her voice lacked certainty now. Doubt had already taken hold. James saw it, and it hit harder than anything else. Not anger, not accusation, but doubt. Because once trust breaks, it doesn't come back the same. Olivia, he said, stepping closer. She stepped back instantly. That one movement said everything. The distance, the fear, the betrayal. And just like that, the bond they built cracked. The men moved in. We're taking this further, one of them said. Olivia stood frozen, caught between truth and what it looked like, between trust and evidence, between him and everything she believed. James didn't move, didn't fight, because this was the consequence, not of what he did, but of what he didn't say. And now, it was too late. Olivia looked at him one last time. Not with warmth, not with trust, but with something colder, something broken. And in that moment, everything they built collapsed. Because this time, everything fell apart. The house felt empty. Not quiet. Empty. Olivia stood in the middle of the room. Still. Unmoving. Everything that once felt safe now felt unfamiliar. The door closed behind the officers hours ago. But the tension they left behind never did. Her hands trembled slightly. Not from fear. From everything crashing at once. She looked around. At the walls. The table. The small space she had fought so hard to keep. And now, it was slipping away. A notice sat on the table. Final. Cold. Unforgiving. Eviction. Her breath caught. No, she whispered. But there was no one to hear it. No one to fix it. No one to explain anything. Because the one person who could had said nothing when it mattered most. James Dean stood outside, just beyond the door. He hadn't left, but he couldn't step in. Not anymore. Not after the look in her eyes. He replayed it over and over. That moment. That distance. That shift. Trust. Gone. And it was his fault. Inside, Olivia sank slowly into a chair. Her strength fading. Her child sat beside her. Quiet. Watching. Are we leaving? The small voice asked. Olivia closed her eyes. Fighting back, everything rising inside her. I don't know, she answered softly. And that truth hurt more than anything. Because she always knew, always had a plan. Until now, her world had always been fragile. But it had never felt this close to breaking. And now, it was breaking, piece by piece. She looked at the envelope again. The money. What once felt like relief, now felt like betrayal. Her hands clenched. Why? She whispered. Not just about the money. About him. About everything. Outside, James leaned against the wall. Eyes closed. Breathing unsteady. He had faced pressure before. Danger. Loss. But this was different. Because this wasn't something he could control. This wasn't business. This was personal. And he had failed. He thought staying silent would protect her. Thought helping quietly was enough. But wasn't. It only made everything worse. Now she was paying the price. And he was standing outside, unable to fix it without breaking everything else. His hand tightened into a fist. There was only one way forward now. One truth left. But that truth would change everything. Inside, Olivia stood again. Slowly, she began packing. Not carefully, not emotionally, just mechanically, like someone who had no choice left. Each item placed into a bag. Each memory folded away. Her child watched silently. No questions now, just understanding that something was wrong. Very wrong. Olivia paused for a moment, holding a small object in her hands. Then she set it down. Her eyes drifted to the door, to the space where James once stood. And for a second, something softened, but it didn't last, because doubt replaced it. And doubt is stronger than hope when trust is broken. Outside, James opened his eyes. He could hear movement, packing, leaving. Time was running out. If he stayed silent, she would walk away. And this time, she wouldn't come back. But if he told her the truth, everything would explode. His identity, his past, everything he had been hiding. And maybe she would hate him even more. He exhaled slowly. This was it. No more waiting. No more hiding. A choice. Lose her, or risk everything. Inside, Olivia picked up the last bag. Her hand rested on the door. Ready. Done. And in that moment, James stepped forward, not hesitating anymore. Because this was the moment. The one that would decide everything. Because if he didn't act now, he would lose her forever. Olivia stepped forward, bag in hand, heart empty. And then, she stopped. James Dean stood right in front of her. Not hesitant, not distant, certain. Olivia, wait. His voice was steady, but heavier than before. She didn't move, didn't step closer. Her grip tightened around the bag. There's nothing left to say, she replied quietly. But he shook his head. There is. A pause. Tense. Unavoidable. This ends now, he said. Something in his tone made her listen. Not trust, not believe, but listen. James took a slow breath. No more lies. Her eyes hardened. Good, she said. Because I'm done believing them. The words cut, but he didn't react. Not this time. I'm not who you think I am. Silence. Olivia let out a small, bitter laugh. I figured that out already. But James stepped forward. Closer. No, he said quietly. You don't understand. Before she could respond, a car pulled up outside. Fast. Precise. Olivia turned instinctively. 2 more vehicles followed. Black. Unmarked. Her chest tightened. What is this? James didn't look away. It's the truth. Doors opened. Men stepped out. Not like before. These weren't investigators. These were professionals. Sharp. Controlled. One of them approached quickly. Sir, he said. Olivia froze. Sir? Her eyes snapped back to James. But he had changed. Not physically, but in presence. In posture. In the way he stood. I told you not to follow me, James said calmly. The man lowered his head slightly. We had no choice. The situation escalated. Olivia stepped back, confusion flooding in. What's going on? She whispered. James turned to her slowly, and for the first time, there was no hesitation. My name is James Dean. A pause, and I'm not just a man passing through. Her breath caught. I'm the one they've been searching for. Silence. Heavy. Unreal. A missing billionaire, he continued. The words landed. Like shockwaves. Olivia shook her head slightly. No, that's not possible. But everything around her said otherwise. The cars. The men. The way they looked at him. Not with suspicion. With respect. With authority. James stepped closer. I didn't tell you because I didn't want this. He gestured around them. This life. This distance. This barrier. Her eyes filled with disbelief. All of it was real, he said. Every moment. Every word. But you lied, she whispered. I hid the truth, he corrected. That's not the same. But to her, it was. Before she could respond, another voice cut through. Enough. The landlord stepped forward. Smug. Confident. I knew something was off, he said. He looked at the officers. This is the man. He's been manipulating everything. James turned slowly. His expression changed instantly. Cold. Controlled. Careful. James said quietly. The landlord scoffed. You think money changes anything here? A small signal from James. That was all it took. One of the men stepped forward. Sir, we've confirmed everything. He held up a file. False reports. Fabricated financial claims. Illegal pressure on the tenant. The landlord's confidence cracked. What? That's not. It is, the man replied firmly. You've been setting her up. Olivia's eyes widened. What? James didn't look at the landlord. He looked at her. I told you, it wasn't what you thought. The truth unfolded fast now. Every lie exposed. Every move revealed. The landlord stepped back. Cornered. You don't understand. But no one was listening anymore. Because the power had shifted. Completely. Olivia stood frozen, trying to process everything at once. The man she helped was never just a stranger. The betrayal wasn't what she believed. And the truth was bigger than anything she imagined. James stepped closer. Careful. Not forcing. Just present. I'm sorry, he said quietly. And this time, there was no lie behind it. Only truth. Only weight. Only everything he should have said before. Olivia looked at him. Really looked at him. And nothing felt simple anymore. Not trust. Not anger. Not even relief. Because everything had changed. And yet, something still remained. Unfinished. Unresolved. Because even though the truth was finally out, the biggest surprise was still coming. The silence didn't last long. It couldn't. Not after everything that had just been revealed. The landlord stood frozen. Exposed. Defeated. The men moved in. Calm. Precise. There's enough evidence, one of them said. No shouting. No struggle. Just consequences. He tried to speak. Tried to deny it. But no one listened. Because the truth was already clear. And just like that, the man who had been controlling everything was gone. The door closed behind him. And for the first time, the pressure disappeared. Olivia didn't move. Not immediately. Because relief didn't come the way she expected. It wasn't loud. It wasn't overwhelming. It was quiet. Careful. Uncertain. Her eyes slowly turned to James Dean. Standing there. No longer a stranger. No longer a mystery. Something much more complicated. You should have told me, she said softly. Her voice didn't carry anger anymore. Just wait. I know, James replied. No excuses. No explanations. Just truth. And somehow, that made it harder to look away. Days passed. Not perfectly. Not easily. But differently. The house was gone. But Olivia wasn't left with nothing. James made sure of that. A new place. Simple. Safe. Not extravagant. Not overwhelming. Because he understood now what she truly needed. Her child laughed again. That sound returned slowly, filling the space that had once felt empty. And Olivia, she began to breathe again, not as someone barely surviving, but as someone rebuilding. Stronger, wiser, more careful. James stayed close, not as a savior, not as a billionaire, but as someone trying to earn back trust. One step at a time. No shortcuts. No lies. One evening, they stood outside. The sky calm. The air still. It feels different, Olivia said. James nodded. It is. A pause settled between them. Not uncomfortable, but unfinished. Because even now, not everything had been said. Not everything had been resolved. Olivia looked at him. Why did you really stay? She asked quietly. Not accusing. Just searching. James hesitated. For the first time since the truth came out. And that hesitation said more than any answer. Because the truth wasn't simple. Not anymore. Before he could respond, one of the men approached. Sir, he said carefully. James turned slightly. There's something you need to see. Olivia's expression shifted. What is it? She asked. The man glanced at her, then back at James. It's about the people who are looking for you. Silence. James's face hardened slightly, because that part of his life wasn't over, not even close. Olivia noticed the change, the tension, and just like that, the calm they had found felt fragile again. Is something wrong? She asked. James looked at her, wanting to answer, but knowing this was bigger than both of them. It's not over, he said quietly. Those words lingered. Heavy, unavoidable. Olivia's chest tightened slightly, because deep down, she understood. This wasn't the end. Not for him. Not for them. Just the beginning of something more complicated. Something deeper. Something that would test everything they had just started to rebuild. The wind picked up softly, the moment shifting, and for the first time, Olivia realized helping him that night didn't just change her life. It pulled her into a world she didn't fully understand. A world that was now coming back for him. And maybe for her too. Because sometimes one act of kindness changes everything. But not always in a way you expect. To be continued. Comment next for part 2. Like, subscribe, and share with your besties.